There we go. You want to do the honors, Joakim, and kick us off?
Yeah, so welcome world to real world OKRs. My name is Joakim Sundén.
And my name is Mikael Brodd.
So I am a consultant at CRISP, which I've been since 2017, where I stepped off my employment as an agile coach at Spotify, where I worked for 6.5 years from 2011. And Spotify was using OKRs, objectives and key results, already from 2009. So they have already been going for a couple of years when I joined. Back then, there was almost nothing written about OKRs. You could find some obscure video from Google, which kind of got it completely wrong, according to many people afterwards. But today, the internet is flooded with resources, so it's almost the opposite problem. How do we find what's relevant from what isn't? That's some of my clients and some contact information if you have questions as well.
And I'm Mikael. I've been with CRISP for some 14 years now, and I've been a consultant for 30 years. Started out as a developer a long time ago and moved through the technical roles. And I guess since all the time at CRISP and a few years before that as well, I've been helping out companies to become better at developing products and services. Same here, a number of clients that I've helped lately, and some contact information to me as well if you want to hook up at LinkedIn and so on. Don't need to spend more time on that. So let's move directly into the gist of the presentation, the OKR part. So pling, Joakim.
Yes, let's just see. Okay, we can start. We want to know a little bit about you before we told us you about us. So if you could use Menti, either through the QR code or the code that you can see up there, to go to menti.com 8439 6867. We could learn a little bit more about who's here. Okay. Web and Intranet Manager. Scrum Master. Product Manager, nice. Data and AI. Wow.
Cool.
So every title is new. No. Now we have Product Manager, seems to be at least a couple. Strategic Product Manager. Scrum Master, it's more than one, I guess. Agile Coach as well.
And we also have between jobs and change managers and leadership coach. Cool. Quite a diverse set of jobs and roles, at least.
Yeah, and next question. How big is your organization? Let's see, do I have to push start again? Yeah. So what size organization do you work at? Wow, that's a big company. Lots of big companies too. Small company. Okay, so who will be the first? There we go, 1,000. Awesome. So we got a good spread, all sizes of organizations apparently. Nice. That's what, 16 responses in total?
Yeah.
That's enough for me to move on to the next question, the last question. So, do you use OKRs in your organization? Is the question. You only have 4 options to choose from. Hope you find a good fit for where you are. Okay, someone is experienced, have been using it for a while, more than 1 year. Some started, some may be about to, and some are just OKR curious. Nice. Well, okay, we have a fairly even spread for most questions.
Yeah, definitely. That's nice. Good.
Let's jump into it. Thank you.
Yeah, so the agenda for this roughly 1 hour. So we're gonna quickly go through what it is, of course, the objectives and key results, and talk briefly on the anatomy and how it's supposed to look. But we will also be sharing a little bit about how we view what OKRs are good for and how it can help especially in the product type of companies. So that's why we will be focusing a little bit on going from outputs to outcomes. And that's also what you've seen perhaps if you've been into the Miro board, that's the little short exercise that we have. And then we will talk a little bit about don't set and forget, and we'll get back to what that means. And then we'll end with a Q&A for a number of minutes, depending on how many minutes we still have left when we get there. So that's really the topics for today then. And so if we go directly into it, so what is OKRs? Well, it is a goal-setting framework pioneered by Intel and made popular by Google. And if you look at the right side of this picture, the man down in the bottom right, his name is Andy Grove, and he was a manager at Intel, and he was actually the originator, the man that came up with the OKR framework. And this is in the 1970s. So it's pre-agile, okay? Just to make that clear and sure. And then it was John Doerr that made it popular when he helped Google in the beginning when they were a small startup in a garage, and he helped them because he had worked with Andy Grove at Intel, and that's how it became popular. And Doerr, of course, wrote a very popular book on the topic for sure. There are more books to read that is interesting. So, and if you read or have read John Doerr's book, you can see that there are a lot of stories in that book, and what he shares there is there is not one way of implementing and using OKRs. There are many ways that you can use them. And from our experience, having helped a number of companies during the years with OKRs, what we view OKRs are good for is not only to set goals and objectives and key results, but it is a simple approach to create the focus, the alignment so that we have the same direction, engagement in the company organization around the measurable and ambitious outcomes. And that it's actually an empowering tools. So by doing this in a good way, we can help teams and others to be more focused on trying to solve problems for the customer rather than just ticking off Jira tickets in some pre-decided order. And we'll get back a little bit to that, but that is really the gist of it and how we look at it. Would you like to add something there, Joakim?
No, not really.
So pling.
That was a cue to me. I get it.
Okay, cool. So OKR, it is an abbreviation. It stands for Objectives and Key Results. This is a simple template. You don't have to use this template, but it might be a good idea to get started. So, and to understand what we mean with this. So we will an objective of some sort as measured by a number of key results. So objectives, this is the what we would like to achieve, and it's supposed to be inspirational and ambitious. And yeah, now I know I'm going out from bed and rushing away to work every morning. This is something that motivates me and challenges me and my team. So inspirational and ambitious, but also short enough so that it's a memorable and a qualitative description of it. So not too long. People are supposed to remember the objectives so that we can talk about them.
How many should you have?
How many should you have? Well, objectives, one. Some say one, some say a few. If you have too many, you won't get that focus that we talked about in the beginning. So the fewer, the better, perhaps.
Right. Fewer than you have today, maybe. Good fewer.
And the key results part. So this is how we measure progress towards the objective. And roughly 2 to 5 quantitative and measurable outcomes. And these need to be connected to the objective. So done in the right way, we will see that if we achieve the key results, we are moving forward towards our objective. So this has to be measurable. That's the important thing. So we need to know how to measure our progress.
If it doesn't have a number, it's not a key result, as one VP at Google expressed it.
Exactly. So just to give you an example or a couple of examples, this is how it could look like. So we have on the left-hand side, the objective is to improve user onboarding and activation experience. And the key results here are increase self-service activation rate from 15% to 30%. So we want more people to be able to help themselves. We want to reduce time to wow moment from 4 days to 1 day. We want to increase our profile completion rate from 40% to 85%. And we want to improve the paid trial conversion from 27% to 35%. So people going from trial to paid. And as you see here, we have a from to in the key results. It's not just to increase with a percentage, because it might be simple or difficult depending on how many you have. If you have one user and you're supposed to increase with 100%, going to 2 might not be hard, but if you have 1 million users going to 2 million users, that's a big task. So that's why we have a from to in the key results.
It conveys more information.
Yeah, exactly.
But it doesn't say about what I should be building.
No, very true. So that's the thing. There could be a number of things that you can do, all of them helping out in moving towards the objective. So this is important. No direct solution here, not the activities, not the things in the backlog, perhaps. They're not in the OKR. This is more of the goal and the idea that we have in order to view how we move towards that goal.
Right, goal setting framework, not specification setting framework or requirement setting framework. Got it.
Nice.
Oh, yeah, and we have another example, make the company desirable place to work, just to show that it's not necessarily software development. Managers can use this too, or HR or anyone. So it's really simple, right? How hard can it be? Not that hard. It's a very simple framework. Only these simple rules. So why do we need to have courses and webinars and so on about OKRs? Well, unfortunately, because most people's lives look something like this. John Cutler, if you're not following him and his writing, you should. He writes a lot of great stuff on product and objectives and outcomes and OKRs. And he came up with the word feature factory that you might have heard since then. So basically, okay, they have a land of meetings and guessing where someone decides this is the feature that we want to be building. Someone called a product owner or product manager, but who might more be a glorified list owner, decide some stuff to build. Maybe there are coming some end of quarter requests from HQ. Do we have UX? Yeah, sure. UX comes in here and sprinkles some pixie dust on top of the features. And here our genius builders take over. It's getting hand over to them. And hooray, a product comes out. And here's the customer saying, wait a minute, is this really what I wanted? So this is the challenge then, that many of us work in due date focused feature factors with a customer vendor anti-pattern built into it, meaning that we have someone giving orders, thinking things up, and someone who's just supposed to be delivering, more or less. So this leads to a couple of anti-patterns that we see. One of them being this. Okay, we used to have implement search function, update search bar UI to look like a wireframe, blah, 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 implement the autocomplete feature as specified by customer, optimize search algorithm by using fuzzy wuzzy library. And this is, okay, now we're introducing OKRs. So there's this tendency, if we get a new tool, to try to fit the new tool to our reality, which we're pretty strong in. This is how we usually do things. So we have a tendency to adapt the tool rather than to adapt our behavior. That's always going to be easier. So we more or less just call it an objective, but it's still, okay, maybe we change the verb to improve instead of implement. Now it's focused on an outcome, right? Not really. We try to make it sound a little bit more open-ended. We're not specifying that it is customer AZ or this specification or this library. So this is kind of open, right? Now the developers can decide how to implement it. No, not really. It's still more or less a feature factory, but in new words. We call this lipstick on a pig. You're not really changing anything. So that's unfortunately common. That change is the hard thing. Another thing, okay, maybe you're getting it a little bit better. You have a clear vision direction. You're able to tap into the outcomes of the company and what's the how can we increase revenue? Maybe we need to extend our market share, increase employee engagement, and so on. And yeah, that's clear, and it's clear how we work day to day. So now you're basically just trying to connect the dots and saying, so we're building feature X to increase profit. But wait a minute, how is that actually connected? And when you don't, between these sandwiches, there's just air, and you really don't have a connection. We call this anti-pattern an air sandwich strategy. The outcome that you're able to put into your objectives and key results is just too far off, so you can't really meaningfully say that you're working towards this goal. So this means that many organizations that introduce OKRs, they're using it mainly for the alignment part that we talked about. Okay, at least we now have some common terminology and framework for talking about goals. And maybe if we're lucky, we're doing it quarterly, because that's another big change maybe from your yearly objectives that you had. But if you're not really moving successfully towards outcome, you're not going to be able to use it for empowerment, and you're not going to be able to leverage the creativity and innovation from the people who are working every day with the enabling technology or meeting the customer or facing the problems every day. So we come at this from an empowered product team's view and agree very much with Marty Kagan, the product guru of Silicon Valley Product Group, author of books Inspired, Empowered, and Transformed, in that OKRs are first and foremost an empowerment technique. And that's also what's challenging. But the most important thing is to empower teams by assigning them problems to solve, focusing on the outcomes, and then give the teams the space to solve them. And it's essential then that we define success by these business results or outcomes and not simply activity or output. So many of you know this, but it's worth repeating that activities, initiatives, features, stories, whatever you call it, that's how we believe we are going to reach our goals. But they are just hypotheses and bets. We always have to remember that. And they have to change if the numbers aren't improving. And we're not going to go into detail, but you have you can check out this book or the HBR article by Ron Kohavi, who used to run experimentation at Amazon and Microsoft. There's ample evidence that these bets have a low success rate. At Google and Bing, 10 to 20% of experiments generate positive results. The rest, you would be better off not to build them. So if your only way to test things is to actually build full feature complete things, maybe 80 to 90% of what you're doing doesn't have any effect whatsoever, unless you're better than Microsoft and Google, that is. And if you look at it, not just the search engine and so on, but Microsoft as a whole with product and internal IT and so on, 1/3 prove effective. So that's a little bit better. And that's also what other people's like Marty Kagan and others experienced as well. 1/3 have neutral results, but even worse, we discovered that 1/3 have negative results. So you're actually hurting your customers or your business by pushing out these features. And of course, the Standish Group's yearly research showing that many of the solutions that customers ask for are rarely used or hardly ever used. So users are bad at predicting their own future behaviors. And, if I ask my users, they would have said faster horses. That's the famous Henry Ford quote. If you ask me on New Year's Day, yes, I want a gym card. 6 months later, do you use the gym card? Why did you buy it? So the user doesn't know what they want until they see it, and then they know it's something else. So we need to move away from these outputs. Even if it's something the customer or user has asked for, it's not necessarily what's going to lead them to be more effective, more productive, more happy, and so on. Not we're working on X because Sam said it's important or it says so in the specification, and we're done when we've completed it or Sam is okay with it. No. We're working on X because we think it's going to give outcome Y, which matters to Chris or Telenor or Spotify because of Z or Z. And we're done when the metrics have moved. So this is what we see is challenging when we work with customers. They're open to, we understand we need to move to this more outcome-focused way of thinking. But they struggle to even formulate these outcomes and understand what they're actually striving towards. Let's just get everyone clear on what the difference is between output and outcome.
Yeah, so if our user base looks something like this, they're not too happy with what we're doing, we need to come up with some kind of idea of, okay, so let's try this. Let's see if this thing, if we build this, that might make them more happy. So we build something, we deliver it, and then we see the result of our users, and yay, look, they were more happy now. They liked what we did. Okay, awesome. So what we delivered, that's the output. So products, features, enhancements, specifications, requirements, status reports, and so on. Those are all outputs. But the change in what the users think about the product, that's the effect or the impact our delivery has had on them. And that is what the outcome is. That's the outcome of delivering the output. And of course, we want to maximize the outcome. That's the most important. And that's the thing that we need to measure. And we do this while we are minimizing the output. We want to build as little as possible and get as much outcome as possible.
And to give you a more concrete example, let's say that this is a typical thing that we want to build a new self-serve help area. It's a feature, basically. That's the output that we're building. What are we actually trying to accomplish by doing that? That's the outcome. We want to help our customers succeed when they are struggling. Or if we want to improve a search function, what is the actual outcome? It's not that, the search function is improved. It's maybe well, did this help rating? It should rise by 15%. Or a new FAQ, what's the purpose? Well, problem resolved rating on FAQ improves from 58 to 70%. Great. Or if we, as in the previous example that Mickey showed, we had increased self-serve activation rate from 15 to 30%. If we have that outcome, we can come up with ideas for what feature to build. Okay, maybe we should implement a setup wizard. But the idea here is that that's just one of many possible ideas. We might also simplify the sign-up process, develop the guided product tours, any other ideas. And this is the trick. How can we, as quickly as possible, decide which idea holds the most promise? And if we try that, how can we quickly measure and find out, are we coming closer to the outcome? If not, maybe abandon that idea, try another one. That's focusing on the outcomes rather than the outputs. And we're now going to practice or get a feel for how we can connect our own outputs to more clear outcomes.
Yeah, so this is a number of tips that you can use in order to see if we are moving away from outputs and formulating outcomes instead. So a number of questions that you can ask when you see what you've written. So what is the current state? Where are we now? And if your delivery, your output was successful, what might we observe? What has changed? Or what does the future look like? That's more typically an outcome. Who will change the behavior, or who will be able to do things that they're not able to do now? How will they change? What is the new thing that they're able to do? What is the new behavior that we can observe? So we want to see, that's the impact and effects that we talked about in the previous slides, that we want to see change with our users or customers. It's the jobs to be done, really, if we talk another language. Also try to formulate things like, how will this new behavior benefit the customers? Why is this important to them being users or customers, and our business? So if we are able to formulate answers to these questions, we most likely have made a nice outcome, a workable outcome rather than an output instead. Yes. So now it's time for a brief exercise, the brief exercise in the Miro board. You should have received the link in the email that we sent out, but I'm also gonna share it in the chat here. So you could go in there, and the idea is now that you individually will work with trying to take an output that you're working with today, something from your backlog, something that you know that, okay, this is something that we're working on, and then try to formulate an outcome or more than one. And people are already starting. Perhaps you could share the Miro board, Joakim?
Sure, I'll do that.
Yes, so we see here now that people are already working, and I'm gonna unhide the slides so that you can see the exercise idea and the from output to outcome and the tips. So as many have started to do, just grab a red sticky and write your output in the right sticky. Red sticky, I mean, sorry, the pink or red sticky. And then try to formulate an outcome in your corresponding green sticky. Okay. As I see, people are already starting, so I think it seems to be going fairly okay. And I'm gonna set a little timer here, so we'll give you another 5 minutes to work on this. So don't be in a rush, and if you're already done, grab another one. Try again. You can resize the post-its in the Miro board so that you can fit in more. And perhaps see, like Joakim is doing right now. So are there more than one outcome for my output? Perhaps. Who knows? And if there are any questions right now, don't. It is okay to unmute and ask them. Not so much perhaps around outputs and outcomes. We're going to get back to that. But if there's any technical thingies, or ask a question in the chat, perhaps if you have experiencing any type of problems, we'll see if we can help you. But it seems like people are on it, so. Okay, I'm scanning through a little bit to see what you have written. And it's looking good. Okay, we're starting to run out of time. How's it going for you guys? So time's up. You can, if you're in the middle of writing something, of course, finish your sentence.
So I think on average, people seem to be getting the hang of this, saying you're doing a little bit better than our average client. Do you agree, Mikael?
Yeah, I think so. We have a couple of things perhaps that we would like to highlight. Yeah, if you zoom in, Joakim.
Where do you want me to zoom in?
I want you to zoom in. We have an example of create a test automation platform. That's the output, and so we're not going to call out on who wrote this or so, but just using this as an example. I hope that's okay. So we have this create a test automation platform as an output, and the outcome is let the tester automate the first 10 test cases of API X. Okay, so the first gut feeling here is that this is perhaps not really an outcome just yet. Perhaps there's something else that might be the thing that you're going for. It's a little bit outputty still. How do you see this, Joakim?
Yeah, so if we find something like this, we would typically run the so what test, or for you Swedes out there, rumpnissefrågan. Varför då? So it's basically so what will actually change in the world? What will make the world better if this succeeds? And take steps to get higher and higher up. And maybe this is actually a good behavior to be affecting. It might be a big problem with what might be measurable in your organization, why going further away isn't. So we're not saying that it's bad per se, but you should maybe think an extra iteration or two if you can get even further towards, okay, what will this actually do for the user or customer? Will it free up their time and maybe the testers? Maybe that's the next step. Okay, what will that in turn enable? So what? And yeah, maybe taking from the opposite point of view, closer to the air sandwich then, empower organization and employees, increase revenue. That might be too far. Am I actually really going to be able to measure that on a weekly or monthly or at least quarterly basis that what we're doing, the activities that we're trying is actually having an effect here? Then we would maybe ask questions such as, how would you know sooner? How can you find a leading indicator that's closer to what the activities you're actually having, that you're planning, the ones that you have in your backlog or on your opportunity list? Can you find something that you would be able to see a more early result that you believe is connected to increasing revenue?
And also increase revenue and those things like increasing profit, improving bottom line, and so on. Having those as an objective with perhaps quarterly focus is also really hard. Just to deduct what activities actually led to us to improve our bottom line. And the other thing is that if we are creating great products and good services to our customers, bottom line will improve. So rather than having, okay, we want to earn more money in the front of our, as the sticky on our screen, that this is why we're here all the time, if we rather focusing on trying to create good services, trying to create great products, helping our customers with their daily problems, then the word will spread that these things that these guys are doing is good, buy their stuff, and money will come.
Yeah, and then we have this one. If we want to reduce troubleshooting time, well, with 50%, as we said earlier, it might be better to say from what to actually what. That conveys more information and makes it more comprehensible for everyone to understand what kind of effort is it. Is it from 1 to 2 or from 1 million to 2 million? Or, well, the opposite here. And we have a similar one here, decrease calls to help desk by X%.
I mean, if you just have one call to help desk per day right now going to 0, is that hard or simple? If you have 2 million calls to help desk per day and decrease that with what it was by X%, 50%, 10%, is that hard or is that difficult or is it simple? So try to have as much information as possible in your key results, or rather in your outcomes then.
So as we can see here in well, the one that I started a little bit for fun, create here, we believe ultimately in empowering people in the workplace and so on, which is kind of air sandwich. So that might be good to actually, when you work with OKRs and when you're new to this, to point out some of these more lofty air sandwich. Why in the end of thing are we actually, what are we trying to do? And there might be several. Okay, we strengthen Crisp brand. Oh, I have fun collaborating with Mikael. I acquire participants to our OKR course. But that doesn't mean that we can have several outcomes. But now rather, okay, but which one are we focusing on here? What's the most important thing? Or maybe it's have fun collaborating with Mikael. Maybe there are other things I could do than run an OKR webinar. If that's the case, we could go out and have a nice dinner instead. And save all of you the trouble to also make us having fun. But also one thing is that we love to teach these things. We really want to empower people in the workplace, and one way to do that is also attract more people to our course that we have. So we actually been helping clients with this, as Mikael said, and started taking that. Well, let's turn that into an actual training, because this is the approach that we use, which has been successful. So in our course, you bring your own backlog, and we go through things like this and teach different heuristics, and we dig a little bit deeper, look at balancing key results, use this so what exercise and going back and forth, trying to find leading and lagging indicators and talk about metrics and so on. But we wanted you to get a feel for that and maybe how to start practicing this on your own with the help of these questions. But we're going to have to move on a little bit. We will have Q&A soon in general, but do you have any questions? Like, I struggled with this thing when with my example, or I didn't get what you were saying. Any questions pertaining to this particular exercise that you would like to ask?
We do get something here in the chat.
Yeah, we had some.
Yeah, I can ask it live if you want. It's okay.
Please do.
Yeah, so the example that you showed on running OKR webinars shouldn't be like the outcome that we're seeking is at least 2 or 3 new clients for Crisp, and a webinar is like a feature that we could do, and that way we can reach the measurement, no?
Absolutely. So I didn't want to make them perfect. I was just
okay.
Using what I typically see people putting out there. I didn't plan to even do this until I just started having fun with this. So these are definitely not this is how you should do it. It's more like I also try.
Yeah, and we often struggle in our company to find a good measurement. Sometimes we get stuck between those air and sandwich, as you mentioned, where we not sure how to measure it and what are the right questions to ask when you're not sure how to measure the outcomes.
Yeah. So one great book in this is How to Measure Anything. I forgot his name, Bill something. We'll include it when we send out the slides. Who shows a lot of great techniques for and reasoning around how you can actually, with very few data points, get to more evidence and learning than no data at all. So that's one book that I propose picking up. But also sometimes people think that it's only hard quantitative data that actually matters. I think one small step, or pretty big step in some organizations forward, is to just, let's talk to people, let's figure it out, let's do some surveys, let's interview, let's talk to the customer, put things in front of it, and not necessarily listen to what they say. They say faster horses, but really figuring out, okay, what do we actually learn from these conversations, or have them rate things, or have internal customer rate things. So there are many ways you could at least get a little bit better than you were yesterday, and take these small steps. And sometimes you might have to have this an OKR for 1 quarter to actually put some measurements in place, instrument your software, establish a baseline, to kind of use OKRs to jumpstart or bootstrap the OKR process, if you want.
Another thing in perhaps in bigger companies is that just move the teams to customer service. Let them sit there and listen in to a couple of phone calls per day or something for a week, and let them experience how it is to be in the customer service department, trying to well, let them eat their own dog food a little bit, and see, okay, what can we learn from that? Is there anything that we can, any insights that we get from actually moving a little bit closer to the customer, just in order to get some ideas on, okay, what are they saying, and get some feeling at least for some data.
Okay, let's wrap it up and move into the general Q&A, and you can of course keep asking questions that are directed to this exercise, but I just want...
We have this in from Magnus in the chat, and Magnus, we're getting to that right now, actually, a little bit about the meeting structure, a pulse, and so on. So that's coming. Hang on.
Yeah, and so you can go to the Menti again and say, what do you find most challenging about using OKRs? So we got some voices here and from Victor and so on what's challenging, and we've mentioned a few things that we see with clients. But in your experience, if you're about to start or if you've already done it, what do you find challenging? Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing the slide. Classic. There we go. Speaking of classics, that's another one. What's the difference between OKRs and KPIs? Well, we'll say KPI, a key performance indicator, might be a good candidate for an OKR, but what makes it into an actual OKR is not only having the metric and saying it's important, but actually setting a target. We want to change this KPI from this to that. And sometimes it's to air sandwich level, so it might not be useful for a team or engineers doing the work, for instance. Yeah, moving away from feature and tech solutions is hard, and that's where we find that just starting to use the language about outcomes and thinking about it as starting talking about bets instead of solutions introduces this probabilistic way of thinking about it, that we can't be sure that we're building the right thing. What are we actually trying to accomplish? And that also leads to engagement with the teams when they know more about what are we trying to achieve. And people typically appreciate those conversations on the business side or the order giving side, if you want. And then when we start asking those questions, what are we doing? Yeah, that's good. Then they come up with the answers. It's also easy to take the next step and say, okay, did that actually happen? Oh, we don't know. Maybe we could start figuring that out. Change in general, yeah, moving from output to outcome. Yeah, lots of good ones here. We'll include this in the thing we sent out. And this is just an overview of what we've been saying. We just want to mention a third anti-pattern that we see is set and forget. You know, this is hard, it's new, we scramble and have workshops and maybe trainers to come in and we spend so much time and we put these OKRs and phew, now we're done with it and let's get into delivery. And we don't have a meaningful way, maybe we don't have these metrics in place. We can't in a meaningful way, say something about how are we doing, or we're just not used to it. We don't have the discipline or the routines in how do we actually do this. So a very simple way is to at least just visualize it and actively start tracking the progress of it, doing weekly stand-ups around it. And you have a link to some blog post here. Start training the muscle and do this check-in every week. So this means that every week you're reiterating the objectives. Why are we doing this? Who's the customer? What is the outcome? And even if the progress is not much, well, the meeting will be short, but at least you're practicing it and talking about outcomes and what you're actually doing for the customers. And also mail update maybe as the organization matures. And this is an example from when I worked at Spotify, where we had great data and visualizations and could push out these key metrics and highlights and progress. How are we doing on milestones, and what risks and blockers do we have? So we have some extra material as well that we'll try to include in the slides that we send out about some different routines or practices that you can do to set this up. Do you have something to add, Micke, before we do the Q&A?
No, I've been trying to answer a couple of questions in the chat, simultaneously. So hopefully that's you get something useful there as well to your questions. So I think we could the last 5 minutes move over to the Q&A and yeah.
Shameless plug then, of course. We have a discount. We have a course coming up May 6th. That's remote like this. We already talked a little bit about what we will be doing in that course, but we'll also talk more about strategy and how that works in an empowered team model, and more about the alignment of it, and look at techniques from starting from the other way around. Okay, now we have our outcomes and our objectives. So how can we brainstorm or find out different opportunities to realize that, and how can we get an overview of that using impact mapping, opportunity solution trees, user story mapping, and similar things. And if you want to go even more deep, a 2-day course on the product model and really go for an empowered organization. Where did the slide go? Okay, we'll have to do the Q&A disappeared. So let's see if I can just progress you can answer the questions that are already in the chat, and let's see if I can.
Yes, and also if you would like to unmute and ask a question, that's totally fine as well. And if you need to leave, then thank you very much for today. Thank you for your interest. It was nice seeing you. 1 hour goes fast. So hope to see you around if you're leaving right now. But if you want to stay a couple of minutes and ask a couple of questions, that's totally fine.
Morten here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good. There. Would you say that there's a difference depending on the maturity of the teams on either how you work with the goals, or would it even influence what goals and or outcomes and outputs you do?
What kind of maturity are you talking about?
Well, let's use the example, very unused to the agile way of working. That's one. Another one would be that the traditional way of working is, I mean, it's been extremely feature factory based. So you're sort of, that's what you're used to, or you could be just a very junior team composed of developers fresh in their role.
Mm.
Pick one of the examples if that was too many.
Yes, I would like to say that I'm not sure that there's a a linear cause and effect between Agile and OKRs. If you're working Agile, you don't have to be using OKRs. If you're using OKRs, you're not per se Agile. So I'm not sure that there's a correlation between agility and OKRs. So if you're not used to working in an Agile way, will you need to have some other types of objectives and key results? My gut feel is no, not really. Perhaps rather than if you've been deep in the feature factory thingy and having a hard time progressing out of that, then yes, that might affect how you do this. Because if you're in a feature factory and you're used to someone telling you what to build, moving to get an outcome that you're supposed to realize, and not knowing exactly what you have to build, but you have to find that out by yourself, that's kind of a big step. Yeah, and it's not for everyone, perhaps. It might add frustration and fear, and because you get more accountability then. So I'd say if you're deep in feature factoring and starting out with OKRs, that it might be a way out of doing feature factories, and then start easy. What that means in reality, start easy, depends on the organization, of course. I need to give the consultant answer here. It depends.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope that made some kind of sense there, Morten.
Yeah, definitely.
So someone actually came into the Q&A here. Do you have any tip on what incentive there can be for the team members to move from feature team to an empowered product team when it comes to working with OKRs? Well, the incentive is that you would have more input into what you should be building and how to solve the customer problem. And I would expect if it's developers we're talking about, these are the people working with the enabling technology every day. They are the ones who are in a unique position to know what's just now possible. Because again, the customer isn't going to know. They're not going to ask for a car. They're just faster horses, faster horses. So it's in the meeting of the people working with the enabling technology every day and the customer need. That's where the real magic happens. And if you can change it instead to, I don't understand the specification. How can I figure out the specification? No, if it's more about, I see this need and I try this thing. It's not helping. It didn't help that I made this change. I thought it was as a given. This typically triggers the engineering mind and this is an interesting problem. I have to try something else. So it's more fun to be working in this way. It's a lot less in my experience this due date deadline pressure because someone has promised a delivery. It's more about we have to together collaborate and discover what's a good thing to do.
You feel perhaps, well, in my experience at least, more motivated to do a good job because, okay, now it's not a set menu that I need to deliver. It's more about my capacity, my problem solution or our problem solution as a team together. How can we collaborate on this together in order to get something useful out of it in order to solve this problem, rather than, okay, let's code something together for building this feature. So I get to use more of my knowledge and my skills as an engineer, developer, and so on, as a team member, when working as or in a empowered product team rather than in a feature factory. Last one, perhaps, in the chat, we have what you see as effective alternatives to OKRs from Marcus Nygren. Do you have anything on that, Joakim? effective, I stumble on the word effective alternatives. There's a lot of alternatives. I'm not sure about them being effective though.
There's this, so I haven't used it myself, but there's this 4 disciplines of execution by Stephen Covey, the guy who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. His son has developed this framework for the 4 disciplines of execution, which is also a lot about focus on one thing. What's the most important thing? And follow up and follow up and follow up. So, but that's more for the focus question. I could also imagine, for instance, working with a startup and trying to find more of a product market fit. Maybe all you need is like opportunity solution tree, which in my view is a good complement to OKRs. But I could also see that you're using that on its own. So you're basically trying to list. You visualize lots of different opportunities, a hierarchy of opportunities, and try to decide together which one should we be focusing on right now, and what are potential different solutions, and that might be good enough to structure it. But that's effective on the team level, and 4 disciplines of execution is more effective for focusing and alignment, but maybe not as much for empowerment. You have what's his name? The alignment autonomy, Stephen Bungay. Mission-based intent is also worth looking into. And strategy deployment through X Matrix by Carl Scotland is also an interesting tool. But I mainly have experience with OKRs working, and then other things not working so well. so
like management by objectives,
exactly, management
balanced scorecards, and so on.
Priorities and achievements, which we had for a year at Spotify between OKRs that someone on HR devised and didn't work at all. So yeah, that's some ideas at least for you to explore, but limited experience on our own.
Cool, it's 5 minutes past. Perhaps it's time for us to wrap things up.
Yeah, we'll share, we'll email a link to the recording once it's done. It takes some time for Zoom to finish it, but and also a link to the slides and some reading material.
Yes, thank you all for attending. Hope you have a great evening and happy rest of the work week.
Just reach out if you have any questions.
Yes.
Thank you. Super helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stop the recording.
Oh, yeah.